I acknowledge and honor the Coast Salish peoples of this land, land in which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Squamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Good morning and welcome to the Carter Center's Forum on Human Rights. My name is Josh Griffin and I'll be moderating today's conversation on the Indigenous Child Welfare Act, also known as ICWA, and its relationship to Native American sovereignty. This is the first conversation in a series of roundtables focused on Indigenous sovereignty in the United States and is produced in collaboration with the Emory University's Masters in Development Practice program. Joining us today is Shaun Little Horn of the Lakota's People Project. Before I have Shaun introduce himself, I'd like to frame today's conversation. In November 1979, Jimmy Carter signed the Indigenous Child Welfare Act, the act which came in response to a disproportionately high rate of Indigenous children being removed from their homes and placed with non-Indigenous families. Established jurisdiction for the placement of Indigenous children in foster or adoptive care. In October of this year, 2022, the United States Supreme Court will hear a case, Brecken versus Holland, which could overturn ICWA. With regard to Indigenous sovereignty, Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution states, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding." To put in other words, all United States treaties are the supreme law of the land. We're going to go ahead and get into both of these components moving forward. And Shaun, feel free to introduce yourself to our audience.
Right. Ao Madakiapi, Wasichua, Shaun Little Horn, Emachiapi, Naha, Lako, Majake, Nape Suta, Emachiapelo, Chande, Wasdeyape, Nape, Chiyazapelo. I want to start by saying that while I am a passionate learner of the Lakota language, I'm not a fluent speaker yet. So if any point in this conversation I mispronounce a word, I apologize to our elders and promise to continue to work hard to represent and to speak our sacred language. What I said in Lakota was, "Hello, relatives. My English name is Shaun Little Horn, and my Lakota name is Nape Suta, which means strong hand. And I shake your hand with a good heart." Josh, I appreciate so much you giving us this opportunity to share our stories and what we're going through in this just crucial time, and appreciate the Carter Center for giving us this forum and an opportunity to speak. Thank you. Wopula.
Thank you too. And real quickly too, I wanted to add in there to our audience, please, ask questions today to Shaun, and we'll definitely get those answered. We want to make this a very interactive discussion, and feel free to just drop your comments and have a discussion on the side too. So going to go ahead and ask, the first question. Why was ICWA formed and what was it a response to? And additionally, can you tell us about the American Indian movement, also known as AIM of 1968, and how it assisted with the passage of ICWA?
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about ICWA and the forming of ICWA, you really have to go back to first contact with colonization, right? So when Europeans came over here, we all had our different experiences and different times that we had interaction in our first actions with colonization and this system of colonization. And so initially, we hear about things like, the Trail of Tears, the Long Walk, all of these experiences that people happen. And depending upon what tribe you were in, your experiences were a little bit different, though in a lot of ways similar. For us here in the Chedi-Shakoi, the Lakota people, we experience colonization as they begin to expand west. And as they begin to expand west, we were forced to try to defend our people and our land and our way of life. And so most specifically in 1866 to 1868 was the Red Clouds War, which was a 2-year war between the United States government and the Chedi-Shakoi, as well as the Northern Cheyenne and the Arapaho. And actually, a lot of people don't realize, they don't teach us too much in school, but we're the only nations to defeat the United States on their land and take their flag. And so the United States came to us and they said, "Listen, we want to end this. Like, we need to expand west, and I know you're tired of fighting, and so let's have a treaty, as you said, that's supposed to be the supreme law of the land." And so part of that treaty, the big part for us was the Black Hills. That's a whole nother conversation. But part of that is that we would move to reservations. And the idea was if they could get us on reservations, then ultimately we would die out. But as we do so many times when we're left alone, we flourished and we didn't die out. And so they began to cut back our rations. They began to cut back our supplies, and that wasn't working. So they said, okay, we got to try something else, right? And so they decide that assimilation is the best opportunity. And this really came to fruition with a man by the name of General Pratt. General Pratt was an Army general. He actually was over a prisoner of war camp of the Apaches. And while he was over the Apaches in this prisoner of war camp, he put them through this assimilation process where he believed that they became, good citizens. They became, colonized, if you will. And so it's really interesting because they didn't choose their first boarding school, assimilation boarding school. They didn't choose an educational mind. They chose a prisoner of war general leader, to lead this thing. And so he started the Carlisle Industrial School. And what he said was this. He said that, it's been said that the only good Indian's a dead Indian, that, that's the only way that they're any value. And he said, I'll somewhat agree with that. This is that if you can kill the Indian within them, that they can become good people. And so these schools we know as Kill the Indian, Save the Man boarding schools, which grew to hundreds and hundreds across the United States during this time. And these schools, the first thing that would happen, Josh, when they would take them to these schools is that they would cut their hair, right? They would take away their traditional garments. They would take away their proud Lakota names, their proud indigenous names, whatever tribe they were from, and they would give them white names. I've got one of my grandfathers was brings them, and they changed his name to Coleman. That was just the way that they tried to make them a part of this society. And so they went through this military regiment, right? They get 5:30, they wouldn't go to bed to 8, and they were working and studying the whole time. But most importantly, during that time is that they tried to strip us of everything that makes us who we are. If you spoke your language, you would be beaten. You would be harshly punished. You could only speak the English language. You could not speak Lakota. You could not speak your tribe's language, or you would be physically assaulted. And I don't want to get too far off on this, but think about this. Our children in our culture were never spanked. We didn't believe in that. We believed that when a young child would begin to cry, the mothers and the grandmothers would cry with them because they were taught responsibilities. Our society tells us, Josh, that if you want to raise a man, you've got to be tough on him and physically toughen him up. But we produced the greatest warriors that ever lived. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and they were never spanked or anything as children. But again, these boarding schools, they're taken away from their families. They're beaten for speaking their language. They're beaten if they do anything within their culture. They were sexually assaulted over and over. Thousands of them killed and murdered and put away.
And what was the time frame for context for people that are listening? Like, and what years are you speaking to currently?
Yeah, so it started, really in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, and this went all the way. There's actually still a few schools, even though they're not the same, they're still there. But in the 50s and 60s and 70s, these schools were still around. They were still here.
I remember we were talking, in preparation for this, and I believe in you were saying 1952 about there's a document about selling indigenous children and things like that. And can you speak to that for our audience, please?
Yeah, so in the 1950s, there's here in South Dakota where I'm at, there was a school that a document was found where this school was taking and they were selling Lakota children and Dakota children for $10. For a $10 donation in the 1950s, you could have an Indian child sent to you. And this particular document is really interesting. It's a really sad story he tells. He said he was basically always slave labor while he was there. He was put on a bus at 6 years of age, and the bus breaks down. He soils himself. He's left alone. He only had a bag. He gets there, and he's always just basically hired labor. So this is the 1950s that this is going on. And that really kind of transitions to what you said about the American Indian movement. Because at this point, as our language had been stripped from us, our culture had been stripped from us, our way of life had been stripped from us, We had gone from our communities raising us to a generation that didn't have fathers and mothers, that the only type of discipline that they understood was the abuse that they received at the hands of nuns and priests. That was all that they knew. And so this terrible epidemic began to pass through to children and generations. And in the late 1960s, 1968 in particular, a group of people came together, the American Indian Movement, our civil rights group. Mainly, a lot of people know as Russell Means and Dennis Banks and these guys. They came in and they said, enough is enough. We are going to be proud to be who we are. We're going to learn our language again. We're going to keep our ceremonies and our spirituality again. Remember, also in 1978 till 1978, our ceremonies, our way of life had been banned. You couldn't go to Switch. You couldn't go to our church services, if you will, or you could be put in prison. 1978, the same year that this was passed, the ICWA was passed. And so the American Indian Movement said, listen, we've had enough. And there were several things. They had occupied Alcatraz. And then one that's really crucial to this discussion is just 5 miles from where I am today, and that is Wounded Knee. Of course, a lot of people know of the massacre of Wounded Knee, where the government came and killed hundreds of women and children and threw them in a mass grave and left them there to die simply because they were practicing their spirituality, and it was banned right after that. So the American Indian Movement comes into Wounded Knee, and he's like, this is enough. We are going to be here, and we're going to stay here until things change. And they had a list of demands, and it actually, the United States opened up the first shot, but there was actually 70 plus days of fighting and shooting within this little community. There were tanks along our road as the National Guards came in to fight, a few hundred people. One of the people that's within at LPLP now, one of my real heroes, that's Madonna Thunderhawk. I mean, you talk about a woman that has transcended and done amazing things for our people. That's Madonna Thunderhawk. But she was a part of that. And so out of that, eventually this thing comes out that they say, okay, we're going to design these panels. We're going to let you have a voice. We're going to allow you to say things. And so the American Indian Movement, it didn't happen in the most politically correct way, but they were instrumental in helping us. Russell Means, Dennis Banks, Madonna Thunderhawk, instrumental in helping us get ICWA passed to protect our children. And as we'll talk about in just a moment, ICWA was produced so that they would stop stealing our children, taking them away from our culture and our community.
That's beautiful. Well, I really appreciate that introduction and just the historical context of it. What I hear is the intentional cultural genocide of a people's, potentially in violation of treaties and your sovereignty, and really trying to Europeanize your peoples, which is similar to my own existence. And that this isn't about African Americans, but it's just like, it's important, I think, for people to be able to identify the similarities, that your struggle is my struggle, and together we can move forward and find solutions.
Right. What wasn't it that was Malcolm X said that we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for us, it's the same. We didn't ask for colonization. Colonization landed on us, right? Like how we got here was different, but our struggle is very much the same.
No, I hear you on that. I couldn't agree more. So I want to go ahead and show a clip of Russell Means before Congress, but I want to go at little context. So this is Russell Means on January 31st, 1989, who's of the Oglala Lakota Nation. He went before the Senate to testify and explain the history and the conditions that Native Americans face on reservations, unequal education, unemployment, sexual abuse of women, abuse of children, and the lack of public services. So this is a somewhat longer clip, but I encourage you all to lean into this at any point. If you feel uncomfortable with what he is saying, I'd ask you to ask yourself, well, why do you feel that way? And then afterwards, Shaun and I will go ahead and unpack what we heard.
It is an honor to come before you as a spokesman for my people, the American Indians of the United States of America. In these United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians. And that is created by the laws of this nation and condoned by its subsidiaries, the so-called tribal government, and designed for the Indian to fail to be expendable, to be eliminated. I take you back in your history. After the American Indian hostiles had been subdued and forcibly confined to Indian reservations, it took approximately 30 years, one generation, for us to adjust and become economically viable. Contrary to what the anthropologists say and what we even ourselves are taught as Indian people. However, allotments were made smaller, our remaining lands were open to homesteading, and we were forced into reducing our livestock. Nevertheless, we made the adjustment again in less than half the aforementioned time, 15 years, and become economically self-sufficient again. But once again, the American Indian was forced into reducing our livestock. The boss farmer concept was instituted. We were told what, when, where, how much, and how little we could grow. This applied to agriculture and our livestock. Again, we recovered in a time span of approximately 15 years. We were so successful in our third recovery that the American Indians enjoyed the finest of economic times, while the rest of the industrialized world was wallowing in the Great Depression. It was then that President Roosevelt introduced the Howard Wheeler Act, better known as the Indian Reorganization Act, the IRA, which institutionalized the so-called tribal governments, which are not one of our institutions, and it is still foreign to us this very day. We have yet to recover. 45 years later, the IRA, Indian tribal governments, on their own initiative, began renewed efforts at reestablishing their sovereignty focused on the oldest profession of American Indians. That's gambling. Bingo and other gaming operations has been, without exception, a proven initial success. Failure through mismanagement, politics, or litigation has been less than 15%, showing a better than 85% success rate. The new Indian-sponsored gaming industry on reservations dwarfed success ratios of any and all other non-Indian industries in America. Gaming operations have proven to benefit the revenue gathering of all governments, be they county, state, or Indian reservation. With regulation of bingo and gaming by the Congress, we are experiencing repetition of history. One shouldn't remedy success. The results? The United States government, through Congress, once again intervenes to regulate a proven success in violation of all basic and fundamental rules of economics and totally contrary to all laws of capitalism. American Indians are human beings. We are supposed to be citizens of the United States of America. We fought in your wars in other countries. Our Navajo Nation code talkers served and saved this nation in World War II. We have the inalienable right to joint venture with whom we choose, as long as we do not harm nor commit fraud upon anyone. There is no piece of evidence anywhere that proves Indians ever conspired with criminal elements to establish bingo. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, the infamous colonial office of the Department of Interior, and the initiator of sleaze in government, has been regulating contracting on Indian reservations since 1824. This fact alone should convince and teach every student of government that regulation of commerce and enterprise does not work.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. You know, as Russell was talking there, he just brought up so many, just the Wheeler Act and just so much history that makes me want to just, dive deep and to unpack all of this and to know truly how the United States has imposed their will upon indigenous communities. Told you how you can dress, how you can walk, how you can talk, the type of economic system that will work for you. But along the way, hasn't really allowed you to fully be American.
Right.
And is that even possible?
Yeah.
What you hear as you listen to that.
Yeah, that first line always resonates with me so strongly, that in the United States of America, an American Indian can be anything that he wants to be but an American Indian. You know, we talk about this nation, we talk about, you know, we the people. Well, we the people has never meant all the people, right? Like from the very beginning, the Declaration of Independence, we're described as merciless Indian savages. You know, we're considered less than human throughout history. And even today, we still, you know, we'll talk about a little bit in a moment, you know, those things, but we still face them today. When you talk about freedom of religion, which I'm a fan of, I believe anybody should be able to celebrate and practice any religion that they want to. And here on the Glala Lakota territory where I live, in the Glala Lakota Nation, we have many different people that believe many different ways. There is no one religion for Indigenous people in our nation in particular. But 1978, you know, in the 1970s, we talked about the Wounded Knee occupation. One of my favorite pictures is a picture of them going into a sweat lodge with the church in the background. But what they were doing technically was illegal and a crime, and they could be arrested for it. Just going into a sweat lodge and praying and singing a song was illegal for us. In the 1978, I was born in 1979. You know, so that kind of gives you how recent that was for us. And all we've ever wanted to do is be who we are. Crazy Horse, who probably probably to me and many people, the greatest warrior that's ever lived. Crazy Horse didn't ever want to fight, though. You know, he was, when you talk about after the Red Clouds War and you talk about General Custer being killed and all that, Crazy Horse, of course, played a big part of that. But he never wanted to fight. He was passive by nature. He was humble by nature. But he said this about it. He said, we never wanted a problem. All we wanted to do was to be left alone and to live our lives how we always lived our lives. And today we're saying with ICWA, we're saying the same thing. We know what's best for our children. We know how important our culture, our language, our lifeways, our spirituality is. We're not looking to be a part of your system. We want to be in harmony with you. We want to work hand in hand with you. We want to be allies with you, but we want to be who we are.
Absolutely.
We're not European.
Absolutely.
We're not, you know, we don't want the colonized system. We want our way of life, and we want our children to flourish in our way of life. Can I say this, Josh? Now I'll shut up for a second.
Oh, no, please continue. You're educating me, so absolutely, please.
But I see this where I live in the Glala Lakota Nation.
Yes.
We have a couple places in particular that are doing an amazing work. There is Thunder Valley has a Montessori school for very young children. And when you get to that children, they have a sign up that says no English allowed, right? So from their very beginnings, they're learning our sacred Lakota language.
That's beautiful.
They're led by a man by the name of Dallas Nelson, who I believe is one of the absolute futures of our people. He's going to do amazing things, but he's younger, but he's leading this staff. And they're teaching them the language. They're teaching them the culture. They're going to our sacred sites. They're playing our traditional games. And when you see these children, these young children, they have so much confidence. They're proud of that long braid that's hanging down. They're proud to be Lakota. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're the seventh generation that Crazy Horse prophesied that would help the Red Nation rise again. And that is because Dallas and his staff and Thunder Valley, they are taking these children and they are emerging them in our culture and who we are as a people. We're best when we are who we are. There's another one, a girls' school. They've got young ladies. In our culture, women are leaders. They've always been special and sacred in our communities. And so our women are the backbone of our society. And they're taking these young Lakota women and they're teaching them our ways and our life. And because of that, our future's bright when we're allowed to be who we are. But the government has never wanted us to be us. They want us to be them.
That's just so. Thank you for the passion. Thank you for that, for the honesty and just that truth. I hear it's like a re-education school, right? To show you, to strip away this European identity and show like this is who you are. This is your history. This is how connected you are to this place. And I also hear how important ICWA is to your people, to be able to ensure that Indigenous children are able to have that opportunity to come up in a society that is reflective of who they are, instead of being taken away and to live within a Eurocentric society. So there's like thank you for that. Another thing too, on a personal level, as someone who's a biracial Black male who's African American and Irish and Polish, I think about how I speak a settler colonial language of English, and just I've been deprived of knowing my own culture with regards to, I imagine I'm West African, and the language that I should speak. And so I just I hear the deep importance of ICWA, of knowing your culture, of knowing your language, and being able to communicate. So just thank you for that, and for allowing me to look within myself and be able to name that, acknowledge that. And additionally, I want to once again encourage our audience, please ask questions. Would love to be able to get those asked to Shaun and everything. So with regard to the ICWA case, that will be going before the Supreme Court in October of this year.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the organization or the firm that's representing the plaintiffs, and how that kind of plays into a larger picture with regard to sovereignty and your lands?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I appreciate this forum to talk about this, because a lot of people, even within our own communities, don't realize what's at stake in the next few months. And if we've learned anything, it's that nothing is certain when it gets to the Supreme Court. Nothing is in stone. And so, we talked about the forming of ICWA, and ICWA has been challenged kind of on individual levels at times. So in this particular case, what has happened is there was a young Navajo child that had been taken from his parents because of substance abuse, but he was had been with his grandparents. Grandparents were raising him, but they just very, very quickly, as happens, they terminated the parents' rights, and they put him in, opposite of what's supposed to happen because of ICWA, they put him into a white home in Texas. And the Navajo Nation has the right, because of ICWA, to find a better suitable home for this child that will allow them to be Navajo, to allow them to be a part of who they are. And so they're placed in this home. Navajo finds a family that's close to this child, and they want to take care of this child. And so, they're going to be awarded back to them. So this Bracken family, they file suit, and very quickly the suit is denied. But what's really interesting is just 6 days, think about this, just 6 days after it's turned down, the Dunn Law Agency, this agency that is known for, Gibson Dunn is known for their work with big oil companies, and really they represent, most importantly, they represent the companies that have tried to push forward the Dakota Access Pipeline, and then Line 3, these illegal treaty pipelines that they tried to push. And so Gibson Dunn begins to file on their behalf. And then, maybe even more strange, they get the Attorney General involved at the family court level, which is, almost unheard of. And then, maybe just even a little bit more stranger, they bring in 3 other states on this lawsuit against Deb Haaland, which is Indiana, Ohio, and Louisiana. Now, that's interesting because you've got oil lawyers working pro bono, by the way, for free. You've got 4 states, and of those 4 states, they only represent about 1% of the total Native population. Very few cases would ever come through there. Yet here they are trying to overturn ICWA. And so when you look at it, they're going this route. What they're saying is that we are not nations, we are a race. And since we are not nations and we are a race, it is actually reverse discrimination against the white family, because they're not being allowed to get this Navajo child because they are white. Well, here's the thing. First of all, this should never made it to the Supreme Court, because the United States of America already set the precedent. The United States of America does not make treaties with nonprofits. They do not make treaties with businesses. They do not make treaties with families. The only people that the United States of America makes treaties with are other nations. So, that in itself means that we are nations. And as you said already, and so important, Article 6, Section 2, all treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. Not might be, could be, maybe ought to be, shall be the
Absolutely.
supreme law of the land.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's happening here is they're trying to overturn and say, prove if the Supreme Court says, yes, they are a race, not nations, then what that means, and the reason that Gibson Dunn is involved in this most likely, is now we can go in and we can take all the resources from these nations. We can put the pipelines through these nations because they're not nations. It's just land and they're just people. And so they're not challenging these oil lawyers that and attorney generals who have almost no native population that would go through this. They are fighting to get tribal sovereignty overturned, because if tribal sovereignty is overturned, now, you're going to see first of all, you're going to see us stripped of our sovereignty, which we're not properly given, but what we do have left. And number two, it's going to be open season on our children. They're going to come back and they're going to begin to steal our children with no repercussions and no way of stopping it. And so this is, in my opinion, the most important time that we've had since 1978, when the Religious Freedom Act and the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed. It is crucial that we get support and people behind us on this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just to continue and engage in these conversations, and to unpack the why, the why have why have Indigenous people not been able to fully assimilate or be able to be, have access to equity and equality and things of that nature. One thing that I want you to speak to, I know at one point you had mentioned to me in South Dakota, like the highest paying moneymaker, what have you, for the government. Can you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So ICWA is here, and by ICWA, just to kind of reiterate again, ICWA is supposed to give the tribe the first rights to keep our children within our communities and with our people. Now, ICWA is the only program like this that is not regulated or overseen by the United States government. It's just there. And because of that, it's not properly implemented. So that's, LPLP, Lakota People's Law Project, that's what we're facing. If this is overturned, we got to go to war and get new legislation passed that protects our tribal sovereignty and our children and our people. If it is upheld, then we've got to fight to actually get this implemented. It works if it's implemented. It just rarely is to the full extent. So South Dakota is a perfect example. You're right here in the middle of, we've got 9 reservations within South Dakota. And so in South Dakota, we are only about 12% of the population, but we're over 50% of the children that are in child protective services. And making that even worse, as ICWA was supposed to give us first opportunity to take care of our children, making that even worse, 90% of those children are taken out of Indigenous communities and they're put into white homes. And I can't express again, America's a melting pot, and congratulations to everybody who enjoys that. But that's not who we are as a people. We don't have the same culture. We don't have the same way of life, the same, issues in there. So we want them within our communities. And so what happens is this: South Dakota has they get money, right, for having these children in there, and they get more money from the federal government when it's Native children that are in there. And in South Dakota, you got 3 moneymakers. Number 3 is tourism. People love to come to Mount Rushmore, the Badlands. Number 2 is cattle. We got a lot of cows. We got I think it's 2.5 cows per person in South Dakota. But the moneymaker in as far as generating and keeping money in the system is Native children in child protective services. Several years ago, it was up to almost $80,000 per year per child. And what that does is it sets as precedent that we don't want to get these children back in their communities, back in homes, because we get that money every year for every child. So there's no desire or urgency, because you get paid extra money to keep these kids in the system. And so it's very troubling. And many times without due process, many times they'll come and take the child off the reservation and they'll move them far away, and we lose them. We have no idea where they are. There's no accountability. Right now in Cheyenne River, LPLP is working with this grandmother's group led by Madonna Thunderhawk. Again, my hero, Madonna Thunderhawk. This grandmother's group is fighting for the rights, and they're trying to get a child protective service that is tribally controlled on their own reservation so they can keep and know where their children are. But they're taking our children, they're moving them across, they're hiding them away. We can't find them. We don't know where they are. And when we do, a lot of times we don't have they might have a court case an hour and a half away. They don't have the resources to get there, or they don't recognize grandparents as viable option. There's so many things that are outside of our culture and our way of life. And so we're fighting at LPLP. We're fighting that with every fiber within our soul and our DNA. We're fighting it, and it's a battle. It's a war. But if ICWA gets overturned, now there's no accountability at all.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the state of South Dakota gets $80,000 when they put an Indigenous child with a non-Indigenous family.
Yeah, and it's every year, so it doesn't stop. So they keep them in the system. So if they're in the system for 15 years, it's 15 times that amount of money. Whatever, I think that number is probably higher now. That's the last report we had was in the high 70s. So that number, I'm sure, has got higher over time with inflation and everything. But every single year, it's not a one-time fee. It's not get them in and get them back and we get some money. It's every single year they're in the system, we get to keep them. And that's why we got to get ICWA upheld, and then we got to get ICWA implemented to keep our children safe, to keep them at home. And also, I think it's worth mentioning, we have a huge problem with these children coming up missing and getting put into human trafficking, because there's no kind of.
Can you elaborate on murdered Indigenous women and girls? And
so this is something that maybe people have heard that saying, right? Like AIM and IWA or missing and murder Indigenous women, and a lot of times now because of the addition of Two-Spirit, we've seen a lot of that happening as well. So what it is our women and children, because of this system and lack of respect for sovereignty that the United States of America has for our nations, we have one of the most unbelievable epidemics that's going around, and that is our women and our children and our Two-Spirit people being stolen, killed, raped, and never anything coming from it. A Native woman, I have a daughter that I have to think about every single day. 3 out of 4 of them will face some type of violence in their life. And going back to what you talked about, 2016 is the last time that the government kept numbers on missing and murdered Indigenous women. Listen to this number, if you will, Josh.
Yeah.
5,712 people in 2016 were known to be missing or murdered, Native and Alaskan Native women during that time. Now, here's the problem that you have. Anybody who's ever seen the movie Wind River, they'll know what I'm talking about at least a little bit. But here's what happens. If a non-Native comes onto tribal land and they commit a crime, the tribal government almost never can prosecute that person. Really, almost all they can do is to remove that person off of the land.
Yeah.
Now, President Obama did pass a law that said if a non-Native commits a violent act or rapes or murders our women and children, that they can be prosecuted if they're in a relationship with that person. Well, that's a very small number of the person. So what happens is our tribal government cannot prosecute them. The government outside of the reservation doesn't have the right the right to come onto the land and prosecute them, or even the knowledge or desire to come on and prosecute them. So the only people that have that right to prosecute them is the federal government, the United States federal government. And out of those 5,712 cases mentioned in 2016, that number is way higher now.
Yeah.
5,712, only 116 of those 5,712 were logged into the Department of Justice database. Because what happens is these pipelines, these workers come on, they'll rape and kill our women and our children, and they can disappear, they can go away, and there's no repercussions. Here in Pine Ridge Reservation, where I live, we have a bad problem with truckers that will drive through the land. They'll see them, they'll pick them up. Our children are trained very early. We got a young neighbor that walking to the park, and I said, you got to stay beside me. We're going up to the park. I want you to stay right beside me. Don't get ahead. She's like, I know, so that I won't be taken. We're not kidnapped, taken, because they know that this is their life.
Yeah.
My 22-year-old daughter, I need her to call me before she goes to the store, when she leaves the store, because I have to know she's safe, because these truckers can come through. They can grab our women, our children. They can rape them. They can kill them. They can do whatever they want. And there's no repercussions. And imagine if you went to, think about Brittany Griner right now in Russia, right? Like, if you were in Canada and you committed a crime, you're going to be prosecuted. If you recognize us as sovereignty and nations, we should have the right to prosecute the people that are hurting our people. Now, Biden did pass something recently, or signed an executive order. We'll see how it comes, and it'll be challenged. But we've for years and years, our women and children have to worry every single time they leave the home, because a non-native can rape, kill them, murder them, and never be prosecuted, and almost never even looked at.
It's just that's disgusting on multiple levels. And thank you for providing the numbers and letting our audience know just the reality of how this government has continued to find ways to other and to not support you all. And I wanted to say too, those numbers that Shaun was quoting were from the United States. From a report by the United Indian and Health Institute, which was published November of 2018. So if you want to really dig in deep and further, I encourage you to look into that report. It has really good data and demographics, spatial data of numbers of Indigenous women who were unfortunately harmed in some capacity. I want to go ahead and show a video that speaks to what Shaun just addressed. AIM and IWA. There's a nonprofit called Native Hope, which is also based in South Dakota, created this video in 2019 in response to this ongoing crisis within Indigenous communities. Once again, I encourage you to lean in and to ask yourself, how can you get involved to fight this crisis? So feel free to start the video.
So what now?
Looks like you're free to go.
What about Jess?
Miss Cooley, we still have 48 hours before we can even start looking for her.
Who was she?
The woman? Hard to say. It's likely she'll be a cold case like the others.
Others?
Marty, what's wrong?
I'm scared.
What?
What if we don't find her?
We will.
All of them?
Hey, you reached Jess, the best. You know what to do with the beep.
Hey, Jess. I know we haven't found you yet. I know you're still out there. I will find you. I promise. I won't stop searching until you're home. To my lost sisters, you are not forgotten. I will never stop searching. Your voices will never go unheard. My daughter, in the silence, sing with me. I love you. I love you.
In the movie A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson, Matthew McConaughey in his closing argument to the jury, he's standing before them and describing, asks them to close their eyes and walks them through this case where this little Black girl is kidnapped and raped, brutally beat by these white men in the rural South. At the very end of his speech, he says, imagine if they were white.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about what would happen if it was different dynamic types of people that were impacted. And so, Shaun, what can I do? What can we do? What can the audience do to get involved in this fight? And that's from a question in the audience. How can we help? How can we get involved?
Yeah, you can't help but get emotional when you live this every day and you see it every day. We've had so many women just this year in the Lakota Nation here in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation that have been found dead. We've got tons and tons and tons that are missing, and for each one of them, there's families and communities that are hurting and they're grieving and we're in pain, and it hurts, and it's not because we don't want, but when you see, these people, these non-natives come up missing, and you see all the news reports and they're following on the media and the social media campaigns and everything that's going on, and all the news and all the people want to know, where is this person?
It happened last summer. There was that woman that looked white presenting that came up dead, and everyone was up in arms about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And we're sitting here and we're losing our women, our children, our grandchildren.
The matriarchs too. It sounds as if that your culture is centered around.
Yes, and they're our strength, they're our backbone. And we don't look to our women, our grandmothers, for instance. Our grandmothers are the carriers of everything. They're the strength of our culture and our people and our community. We reverence them, we love them, and what better way to harm our people than to take our women that we love and we care and that it means so much to our people, and it just hurts because you tell us that we're American citizens, right? Even though you waited to the 1960s to give us the right to vote in every state, whatever, but you tell us we're American citizens, but why don't you care about us the same way that you care about everybody else? And that's what hurts. Second, the most is obviously the losing and the pain of them being gone, but that so many people otherwise don't care. So what we're trying to do at Lakota People's Law Project, one of the big things that we're doing, if people will go, to lakotalaw.org, they'll see on that front page when it comes to missing and murder Indigenous women, we have a call to action there, and it takes about 30 seconds if you go and fill that out, and that's all that it takes. And what it will do, it will email your congresspeople. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get new legislation passed that will help us to protect our women, our children, and our two-spirit. But we're also trying to there's a law called the Savannah's Act that has been passed but has never been implemented or funded. And so we're trying to pressure Congress to say, prove that you no longer look at us as subhuman. Prove that you no longer look at us as merciless Indian savages. Prove that you care about our women, that you care about our children. Prove it and fund it and give us the access to protect them and take care of them, or get out and leave us alone, one or the other. And so, that's where we're at. And so if they go to lakotalaw.org, that one there is AIM and IWA. I believe you also have the link for our ICWA. Again, we're trying to do two things. We're trying to be prepared. Our amazing legal team, that has fought. See, LPLP was actually founded years ago because of ICWA. This has always been the foundation of what we do. But we have an amazing legal team. They're preparing a brief for the Supreme Court to try to also hear out our side in conjunction with Holland and others. And so they can go there and fill that out, and that will help us to reach out and show the support that we have to keep ICWA intact, to keep our children within our communities. And it's just crucial. It's crucial. And I said this in Seattle to somebody. They asked, well, what can we do? What can we do to help? What can we do to help? And I said this, and I believe this within the depths of my soul, that we are in the Chetichakui and the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota people, we're warriors, great warrior people. That DNA still runs in our blood. But it's changed a little bit in the fact of this, that we're no longer, our warriors of today, they're no longer going to be riding upon horses to win battles. They're in the legal rooms. They're in the courts. They're telling the United States of America live up to your own laws. We shared this off the air, Josh. I'll try to hurry with this, but Russell Means, was our Martin Luther King Jr., right? Like, he was our guy. He was the one that fought and spoke and made us proud to be who we are and showed us that it's good to be Lakota, and grew up actually like right across the street from where I'm at now. But Russell Means said this. He said he's been called radical. He said, maybe I am radical. He said, the only thing I've ever been shot for, the only thing I've ever been stabbed for, the only thing I've ever been thrown in jail for, the only thing I've ever been beaten for and arrested for is to ask and demand that the United States of America live up to their own laws. And so we're doing at LP, the warrior of today, going back to that law room. When our warriors were in the field, they lived off the buffalo. We used every part of the buffalo. That's how we sustained. That's how we went for it. That's how we survived. That's how we had our way of life, was around our relative, the buffalo. Today, our supporters are our buffalo. They're the ones that keep us going. They're the ones that just, you may not have money to help us with the financial costs, but you can put your signature on something and let us say that these people stand behind us. They are our allies. They may not be native, but they are with us. They are part of us. They are our relatives. As I addressed you when we first met, you are my relative, Josh. We fight the same battles together. You are our ally, and I am your ally. We're relatives. So we need people to go to lakotalaw.org and to sign those 2 petitions. We have got to get movement. And the Supreme Court, they might overturn it. And when they do, if we don't have that support already in place, we're in a lot of trouble. If we do, we can help get legislation passed as we pressure these Congress people. But if not, the world as we know it as Lakota people, the assimilation, the genocide might be complete.
Speechless. I got chills in my body as you speak. And just to reiterate what Shaun is speaking to, please get involved, sign those petitions, and let us come together at this table of brotherhood, as sisterhood, as Martin Luther King once said, and fight so that we all can have equity and be treated equal. I want to show a video of Russell Means real quick, and then come back and wrap everything up. Just gonna show a quick little video of Russell Means, and in this he's older, well seasoned, just has a lot of truth.
Ametakuepe. Mima Lakota. Imagianta, ha. Makinzi Tioshpa. Kile Chesapa King. Lilawakan. Makawakan. What I told you in my language, roughly translated, is part of what I'm bound to say when I speak to people, because I come from an oral society. And I said, hello, my relatives. I am an ally, and I come from Yellow Thunder Village in our very sacred Black Hills, our holy land. Mother Earth here is what really it's all about. The female-male balance in the universe. As you can see, the disrespect for everything that is sacred is what's wrong with this society. And nothing's ever going to happen until this society accepts the fact in their heart, not in the right side of their brain, as the so-called Western scientists have ascertained, the right brain thinking, the linear mathematical equation to life. But what is needed is the knowledge and the wisdom that the earth is a living being. Even the Bible, a male-dominated religion, tells you dust to dust, that we come from the earth. And yet, Christian theology is bereft of anything about the environment. Our sacred grandmother, the Mother Earth, is what it's all about. Once we understand and know and feel that she is alive, you know, Western science has ascertained that. In the early 80s, they sank a shaft in Greenland, of all places, a mile or so down into the earth, and brought up data for months and months. And with that data, they ascertained that the earth is a living organism in space. So now you've got your proof. You've got your proof. So please, start putting it in your heart. You got it up here. Now put it here. And she's alive. And she hurts. And she feels like you and I. With that kind of respect and knowledge, then this junk, all this junk, wouldn't happen. And you will understand the value, the spiritual value of a mountain that is the breasts. The mountains are the breasts of our Mother the Earth, and that's where we go for to nurture our spirituality. Ask any religion on earth. Ask any scientist about the ions. If you don't know what ions are, then go to your heart. I want to thank everyone for this play. I want to thank everyone for this honor. And I want to thank you for your attention. Oh, mitako yase. We are all related.
Thank you, Shaun. It has truly been an honor to be able to engage with you. And I look forward to continued conversations. And I encourage everyone to look within themselves, to get involved, to fight for ICWA in a way that makes sense for you, and to be intentional about your allyship if you choose to be in relationship with Indigenous struggles. The floor is yours, Shaun. Please tell our audience final thoughts.
You know, we talked a lot in this forum about race, and it's something that you and I, we live every day. You know, we experience every day, good, the bad, the ugly, it's there every day.
Yeah.
And I would say this, that I don't want to be anything but who I am. I was born to be Lakota. I love being Lakota, and who you were born to be and who you were created to be, you should proud to be who you are. And as he said at the end of that I think is so important, whenever we end in prayer, or we end in gathership, you know, we use that saying that he said that means all my relations, all my relatives were all related. And that's the thing about, and I'll say this, the crazy horse prophecy that said the seventh generation will rise again, and that there'll be chaos in the world, and that the world was going to come back to the Red Nation for wisdom and insight and our connection to Uchimaka, Grandmother Earth. But he said this, and I think it's so important. He said that we'll all be one circle again. And even though we're different, we're in this fight together. We're in this battle together, and we need your support. We need you to stand with us. We need you to say that our lives and our rights, they matter.
Absolutely.
Because we have to stand in one circle. And Josh, I can't thank you and the Carter Foundation enough for giving us this forum, to giving us this platform, because so many people, they don't know, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. It's hard stuff to talk about. It's hard to talk about, you know, a nation that you love but has mistreated other people. Absolutely. It's hard to talk about women and children that are being murdered and killed. These are hard conversations. My heart is heavy right now as we talk about these things, but I appreciate so much the opportunity to talk about them. And I appreciate so much for everybody that has tuned in, and people that will watch later. And we just ask you to stand with us. That let's unite this circle again, and let's make this world better. Let's make Uchimaka healthier. Let's do this all together. And again, Wopula, Josh, for giving me this platform to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And together, we are duty bound to help one another.
Yeah.
Now you know, now you get to choose how you're going to get involved. Thank you, Shaun. I encourage you all to go and fill out those petitions. And real quickly, too, I also want to thank Jason Parker.
Yes.
We've been doing these videos now for well over a year. And I just really want to say thank you for all that you've done and helped me continue to build these roundtables. None of this would be possible without you. And to everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I believe in you. And I look forward to what you're going to do with regard to continuing to fight for ICWA and Indigenous issues.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.